Ever since 2019, SpaceX has been launching batches of about 60 Starlink satellites at a time.
You can see the Starlink satellites gently floating away.
Enough are now in orbit to start its plan to connect nearly every inch of the world.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. Those white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal, they're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that.
Now we're headed toward 5G, the next generation of wireless. The truth is, experts can't tell us what 5G actually is because they don't even know yet.
I believe that Americans deserve to know what the health effects are.
There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now.
But no, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here.
To say Elon Musk is a busy guy is an understatement. Between running SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, he apparently plans his day in 5-minute slots. Time is precious, so one day in 2016, while sitting in another LA traffic jam, he had enough and tweeted he was going to build a tunnel boring machine and just start digging. In case anyone thought he was kidding, he followed up with, "I'm actually going to do this." It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision to found the boring company. Musk had been thinking about it for a while.
Traffic is soul-destroying. It's like acid on the soul. It's horrible.
The first loop will be in Las Vegas. Built for the massive convention center, which hosts the Consumer Electronics Show every January. A walk from one end to another normally takes 15 minutes. That's now turned into a 1-minute ride. Visitors will be packed into a Model X, Model 3, or a modified Tesla that can fit up to 16 people. This is an earlier prototype. The vehicles will be zipping through the tunnels at up to 155 miles per hour, initially with a driver, and eventually autonomously. The vehicle will rely on its own tires, driving through a paved tunnel.
I mean, would it be incredible if you could travel around LA, New York, DC, Chicago, Paris, London, anywhere at 150 miles an hour?
Expanding to major cities around the world will only be possible by bringing down costs. The same strategy Musk applied to the rocket business.
The final liftoff of Atlantis.
Space shuttle launches used to be really expensive, $450 million per mission.
Godspeed, Bob and Doug!
Then SpaceX came along and dropped it down to $62 million for a Falcon 9 flight, largely because it's able to reuse parts of the rocket. In the same way, building tunnels is very expensive. Los Angeles' Purple Line subway extension has a price tag of more than $1 billion a mile. Yet the 1-mile demo tunnel only cost $10 million because the Boring Company applied the principle of reusability, responsible for SpaceX's success. Tunnels also makes building faster. Tunneling today is slower than a snail.
This is our goal. We must be faster than a snail.
They plan on beating Gary, the company's pet snail, by bringing a different approach to drilling. Usually, a tunnel boring machine, or TBM, drills then stops as the segments are installed. The boring company wants to do both at the same time and with a more powerful machine. A standard TBM can dig 1 mile in 8 to 12 weeks, whereas Boring's third-generation TBM, the custom-designed proof rock, is meant to go more than 1 mile a week. And if it moves that quickly, the system could rival subways, or in Musk's words, crush subways.
You're in for a treat. Phil Schneider has 17 years experience working in the government black projects. He carried a level 3 security clearance. He's a former government geologist and engineer in the black projects, underground bases at areas 51, S4, and Los Alamos. He's going to expand your mind here this morning. Please welcome Mr. Phil Schneider.
I'm Phil Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer with aerospace applications, self-taught metallurgist. Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site. It used to be it'd take a year to 2 years to build each one. And now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods. My colleague Al Bielik has actually been on some of the high-speed railways, the magneto-leviton trains that connect all the deep underground military bases within the United States. He's been on a Mach 2 train and floats off of a single rail at 3/4 of an inch off the rail, and is what you'd call high tech. We have nothing like this on the surface. The public basically has been totally lied to. We're considered stupid or even moronic in some cases. It's got to stop. If we're going to gain our country back, we must, and I repeat, must instill in our public officials, anybody that goes and does public service, they must tell us the truth. If they cannot do this, then they must be impeached, or they must be removed from office. If this cannot occur, if the truth cannot totally come out, there are reasons for secrecy, for instance, but if the truth cannot totally come out, what's the use in us having anything called freedom?
If you want to make an omelette, you got to break a few eggs. And by omelette, I mean a theory of everything. And by a few eggs, I mean a billion subatomic particles obliterated in the next generation of giant particle colliders. In June, the European Strategy Group, the consortium of Europe's top particle physicists, published their vision for the next several years of particle physics experiments in the EU. A big part of that is the Future Circular Collider, which, if it happens, will accelerate particles in a 100-kilometre circumference underground ring encircling Geneva. It'll be nearly 4 times the size of the Large Hadron Collider, and it will be capable of colliding particle beams with 8 times the current LHC energy. The hope is that this will open the window to brand new physics and perhaps break the current deadlock in our quest for a theory of everything. But first, to get some perspective, we need to take a step back and talk about how collider technology got to where it is today. Physicists have been building machines to accelerate and subsequently obliterate particles since the 1920s. The first was the linear accelerator, or LINAC, which uses oscillating electric fields to accelerate charged particles in a straight line, while the beam is focused by magnetic fields. The cyclotron quickly followed. Here, particles are still accelerated by electric fields, but now a constant magnetic field causes the beam to spiral outwards from its central source. Once accelerated, the particles were typically slammed into a motionless target, often just a slab of metal. Some particles would collide with enough energy to be destroyed, and their energy would be released in the form of new particles. In those first collision experiments, all sort of never-before-seen particles were observed, allowing physicists to begin to map out the subatomic realm. There's a serious limit to the energy you can muster by colliding particles into a stationary object. To be precise, collision energy with a fixed target goes up with the square root of accelerator energy, which means you're wasting a lot of energy. On the other hand, if you can collide 2 beams moving in opposite directions with each other, then you get the full oomph of the impact, twice the energy of the individual beams. The key to doing this is to store the particle beams in a ring so that they can be collided at your leisure. To that end, the particle storage ring was invented by Gerard K. O'Neill in the mid-1950s. Within a few years, an Italian group built the first particle beam collider, the ADA, or Anello di Accumulazione. Apologies for the pronunciation. Its 4-meter ring collided electrons and positrons. The Soviets quickly followed with their VEP-1, which was smaller but collided electrons with one another to get 1,000 times higher luminosity than the ADA. In collider speak, luminosity is a measure of the number of particle collisions across an area over a time period. More collisions means more chance of producing weird particles. The Americans soon followed up with a 12-meter electron-electron collider with a similar luminosity to VEP-1, but with higher energies than even the ADA. Finally, we'd reached collision energies needed to test predictions of the still relatively new quantum electrodynamics. This was huge in solidifying our understanding of the quantum world. Graduating from electrons and positrons, in 1971 physicists started smashing protons together at CERN's Intersecting Storage Rings facility. CERN does have a habit of extremely literal naming. Since then, colliders have only grown in size and energy. The Tevatron at Fermilab in Illinois was for a while the largest collider in the world at 6.3 kilometers around, operating from 1983 to 2011. It generated collisions energetic enough to produce the very massive top quark, and so enabled the discovery of the final fermion, or matter particle, in the Standard Model. This entire effort reached its pinnacle with the Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Switzerland. It propels twin proton beams in opposite directions around a 27-kilometer circumference ring beneath the Swiss and French countrysides. The beams cross in 4 locations where they collide with energies of several tera electron volts, which is, for reference, a lot of energy. And the crowning achievement of the LHC was the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012. The existence of the Higgs confirms our explanation of how the elementary particles acquire mass, which of course we've covered previously. In a sense, this was the last missing piece of the Standard Model, the one remaining particle that physicists thought must exist. LHC particle hunters expected that to just be the beginning, that their giant collider would go on to discover many new particles to take us beyond the Standard Model.
Particle accelerators are among the most amazing scientific instruments ever built, and they allow us to explore the behavior of matter under unbelievable conditions. The world's highest energy particle accelerator is called the Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, and it allows physicists to collide together beams of protons to generate temperatures 100,000 times hotter than the center of the sun. The last time those temperatures were common in the universe was 1/10 of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. While the LHC is expected to be the world's flagship accelerator for the next 2 decades, physicists are already thinking of a replacement accelerator. After considerable thought, calculation, and simulation, physicists have decided to pursue a circular accelerator with 2 counter-rotating beams of protons. The circular design is to limit costs, and the proton beams both limit costs and allows for the most diverse research program. The tentative name for this accelerator is the FCC, for Future Circular Collider. Now, where the FCC is located is actually a global geopolitical question and depends on which country wants to host it. That decision is actually decades in the future, with China being one option. The decision of where it will be located, or even if it will ever be built, will all be made at a pay grade well above mine. However, there is a community that thinks the most sensible place to locate an FCC would be at the CERN laboratory in Switzerland. The reason is pretty compelling, at least to me. For one thing, there is a talented and professional technical staff there with advanced accelerator knowledge about accelerators already assembled. Plus, there's considerable amount of infrastructure, and the existing LHC infrastructure can be used to raise the energy of the beam before the FCC brings it to the highest energy. Once you've decided to make a circular accelerator with about 7 times the energy of existing accelerators, you're ready to start the design process. The first question is how big of a ring to make. This is actually pretty straightforward and uses only introductory physics. The thing that makes a charged particle follow a circular path is a magnetic field, and the circumference of any particle accelerator is just full of magnets. The magnets push the trajectory of the charged particles towards the center. But each magnet can only push so hard, and if you have a higher energy beam, you need a bigger circle. This idea is demonstrated in this simple equation here. The strength of the magnetic field times the radius of the circle equals the energy of the beam. A careful physics student will remind me that I really should say momentum and not energy, but at these energies, and for my purposes, we can use the words interchangeably. So it's easy to see that if we increase the energy by a factor of 7, we need to increase the radius of the accelerator by 7 as well. Given that the LHC has a circumference of 27 kilometers, or about 16 miles, that means that the FCC would have to be about 189 kilometers around, or about 116 miles. And yes, if you do the calculation yourself, there are some rounding issues here. So that's huge. You have to dig a very long tunnel, build a lot of magnets, etc. So what can you do to make things easier? Well, you could also increase the strength of the magnets. If you could double the strength of the magnets, then you only need to increase the accelerator circumference by a factor of 3.5 or so. The current LHC magnets are made by making wires of an alloy of niobium and titanium. If you cool them to near absolute zero, you can run an electrical current through them and they'll make a magnetic field of 8 Tesla, which is a magnetic field about 160,000 times stronger than the Earth's magnetic field. Using niobium titanium technology, you can make a magnetic field of 9 or 10 Tesla, but no higher. So scientists have been working with an alloy of titanium and tin, which should be able to make stronger magnets. Magnetic fields of 13.5 Tesla have already been achieved, and it's thought that 16 Tesla is possible. So that might be the way to go. Beyond the magnets, we need to figure out better ways to make stronger electric fields to accelerate particles. That's also a big deal, but probably the magnets are the biggest challenge. Make stronger magnets, and you can make a smaller accelerator. So if we build such a powerful accelerator, what will we find? That's always a tough question to answer. First, we're in the business of exploring and discovering. If we knew the answer ahead of time, we just wouldn't do it. But we do know what we'd be looking for. We'll be searching for dark matter and to see if there are even smaller building blocks than the familiar quarks and leptons. We'll be looking for something unexpected. And it's probably worth noting that the LHC accelerator program is just getting started. If LHC scientists find something, we'll have to significantly change our plans. That's the cool thing about working on the edge of knowledge. We don't know what we'll find.
Quinn, I'm so sorry, man. All this technical
Hey.
stuff. But we
Yeah.
are live in Vegas.
Beautiful. Welcome to fabulous Las Vegas.
Fabulous Las Vegas. So tomorrow we're going to check out what? How are we going to determine where this power
Well,
is actually
first,
coming from?
we're going to go to Vitara and we're going to find the center of the circles.
Right, okay. So we're talking now about
The big circles.
the particle
Accelerators. We got to find the center because
a lot of people have been emailing me, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No
but
problem.
doubting your theory that
That's
these
fine.
circular constructions are necessarily particle colliders. They think they're just elaborate, expensive architectural features of Las Vegas hotels.
That's why they're there like that. See,
So that you
but
will
those
think
structures, see, those structures are not just in Vegas hotels. That same structure pattern is in Dubai. It's in the Naval Yard. It's in too many places for it to be a coincidence. So if those people are sending those messages and they're only referencing Vegas individually, you need to look at it as a global design structure where you have these things all being designed on the same design architecture with different treatments.
Okay.
So you have to look at it on a global scale, not on a Vegas scale.
How could we ever get any definitive proof that, holy crap, Quinn was right, this structure is under the ground?
We have to stop messing around and start standing up for it and start looking at Fermilab and what they're making and saying, I may be wrong, but the percentage chance that I'm right is too high.
Fermilab has
Yeah.
made these things.
Yeah, so I may be wrong, right? I admit that. As a smart person, I admit as a sane person, as a mathematician, as a person who's spent months and months and years of my life designing, developing decision models and AI and researching.
It's not necessarily 100% correct.
I'm going to be the first to admit it, but I'm going to say my percentage is so high that every single United States citizen should immediately stop what they're demanding and know the truth. It's that high. That it's your job, it's your future. My percentage is so much higher than even 80% on this.
How do you determine that percentage?
Because the Fermilab specifications to fault lines and magnetic centers of the Earth that it requires and where these things are at, and the fact that all the circle complexes are being used in big business to fund unknown development.
To fund what?
Unknown development.
So you're saying Fermilab has said, hey, based on the Earth and magnetism and fault lines in the Earth, we need these colliders to be here.
Otherwise,
Vegas.
they create problems. So then you look at the cryptocurrency and you look at the very few places in the world that when the financial markets crash, the corporations that are invested in cryptocurrency when the fiat market crashes are going to be the biggest corporations in the future forever. So casinos that do transactions on gambling, do transactions on services, that do transactions on everything, they have a vested interest in something like that.
What's MGM got in terms of Bitcoin? How can we determine what a
I don't know.
corporation is holding in terms of Bitcoin?
I don't know, but I can tell you just in my research of MGM with the Democratic National Committee being connected to Hollywood, with Haim Saban referring Palantir to the Clinton connection, I would imagine that based on the connections, they've all been using the software, they've all been secretly mining, and when it comes out, all these big corporations are just going to be infinitely rich forever in the future. I may be wrong, but when you follow the money, it seems really, really good for a corporation to crash your country and get rid of taxes and take a cryptocurrency that's not taxed. Seems like it would increase your profits.
Wow.
So for me, I'll admit there's a lot because it's very advanced technology. I'm not a nuclear scientist. I didn't go to Stanford. I'm a dude who loves to write code, and I love artificial intelligence. I have ever since I was a teenager.
Admit that you could be wrong.
I could be. But the percentage of my research and the continued confirmation of things that I'm researching, that are showing up, that people are experiencing, it's the scientific method. Sometimes it just gets so much and you're like, it's there.
Okay.
You know, whatever form it is that I can't see that's underground, you know, maybe some of my theories are off because I don't have a sound basis of the theory. But based on my research of all the Russian, the uranium, the AI, the blockchain, it all just seems like it's a big giant business plan. And then I would keep an eye out for regulation. But the way this is going right now with the speed of evolution, America is so far behind.
Yeah, why won't they just come out with a crypto dollar to compete with this? Doesn't it seem like...
Because all this stuff, all the criminal stuff was developed in America. So if we deregulate it, people are going to start asking, where'd you get all of it?
I don't understand what you mean.
The guy who did Silk Road was an American. Peter Thiel developed the technology in America.
The Palantir technology.
Yeah. All the technology that's running this was developed in America. Where did it come from? Who paid for it?
Who did?
We did. The government, the United States citizens paid for all of this.
Well, so now it's starting to sound more like some sort of deep state construct more than an AI construct.
It's a control the future construct.
By who?
Whoever controls the AI.